Namo Arihantanam, Namo Siddhanam, Namo Ayaryanam, Namo Vajayanam, Namo Loa Sava Savanam, Eso Panchanamo Karo, Sava Pavapanasano, Mangala Namja Savisim, Paramam Havai Mangalam. Thank you and Jai Janinder, everyone. I'm so excited to have this session today. I think the idea and the conversation regarding engaging the Jain youth is something that has been talked about for a while. I think this conversation is happening at every Jain derasar globally, whether it's in major cities or even in big temples in India. We're all having this conversation on how do we engage the youth? How do we get them involved? In the most recent years, right? Even pre-pandemic, we have noticed that there's less interest in, Jain Dharam. There's less Jains coming to Bachala, less Jains coming to derasar, and there just seems to be less volunteers in general. And as it's so important that we do engage our Jain youth. Essentially, the next generation will be the ones that will carry the mantle forward, right? They're going to be the ones that are going to be managing our temples and carrying the name of Jainism. And as we think about what is that disconnect that is kind of breaking that connection between us and the next generation, we want to think about how we can engage them. How can we break barriers, whether it is language barriers, whether it is geographic barriers, or maybe there's something that's missing in there. And so in today's session, I want to have like a very organic and open conversation about what can we do, as Jains, as leaders in various organizations, and talk about how we can engage the Jain youth. And so before we begin that, I do want to thank Arihanta Academy for sponsoring and hosting this event. We are so grateful for their organization and everything they're doing for the Jain community. And if someone wants to also maybe share a few words about Arihanta Academy, please feel free. I think we'll pass it to Dr. Parveen. And we also have like a short video we want to share, and then we'll go ahead and get started with the conversation. And so, Dr. Parveen, please feel free to unmute.
Jai Janinder. Thank you everybody for attending today's session. Sunny from Global Jain Network has done just excellent job over the last year or so in creating the awareness around the young Jains all over the world, actually, not just North America. So congratulations, Sunny, for doing that. And then he has had great help from Varun Gandhi and Arpit Mehta. Both of them have been active in young Jain community. And Riya, thank you as well for agreeing to co-chair YJ this year. So it's great to see young people in this room taking charge of our activities to continue to spread the message of Jain Dharma. Just to give a little bit background, I'm Parveen Jain, CEO founder of Arihanta Academy. Along with me, we have Professor Christopher Miller. He's a co-founder. He's the head of our academics. He's a chief academic officer. We are building this as a startup. So the titles and the messages that you'll see will be like a startup from a Silicon Valley. Arihanta Academy is a new nonprofit endeavor to make Jain teachings easily accessible around the world. We can see that over the last few decades, and particularly in the last few years, how things have been changing around the world, mostly because now we are interconnected world. So we get to see, we get to hear very quickly all the things that are happening. But the increasing violence against animals, environments, ecology, and even human beings, it continues to increase and become more and more available. So there are a lot of movements that are actually coming up to bring peace and non-violence and message of compassion to these communities, that we got to change the way we have been living. We got to change the way we have been interacting. And it's interesting that many of these people talk about the messages which are at the core of Jain philosophy. Okay, they know Jain philosophy, they know Jain Dharma, but at the same time, they don't know it. Okay, they want to learn about it. Over the last few years, we have heard from so many people that, hey, I've heard Jain people, they do this, they do that, but then beyond that, they don't have any idea and they want to learn. So that is obviously one motive for starting Arihanta Academy. And second is our own community. Okay, we are seeing that as the subject of this today's conversation is how do we engage more Jains into our activities? Okay, and we have seen that from Sunny, your Jain Global Jain Network, that people are interested in interacting, in staying networked with Jain community, and they want to learn about it also. But we have to offer it in the way that they relate to, that they want to learn it, they want to talk about it. So we are setting it up so that young people guide us how to do this rather than we telling them do A or B or C. I personally never believed in that. I want our young people to tell us, I want to do this thing. And then our job is to remove the hurdles for them to really achieve what they want to do. This has been my personal motive all along, and this is what we are bringing in Arihanta Academy. And our starting team, if you look at, except for me, I'm young in some way, but except me, most of the people are in 30s and 40s. And that is very, very encouraging for me personally, because after we have done some progress, we want to hand it over to our young people to run it. They want to run it, to bring Jain teachings around the world. So I'm going to just stop here. I'm going to share with you a video which essentially tells us why Jain teachings are so important in the world today. Okay, ancient wisdom, modern living, how do we bring it together? And that is a theme of Arihanta Academy. So I'm going to share a video. I'm going to play a video for you.
All part of a vast, interconnected web of life. This web consists of known and unknown living and non-living entities that support the existence of one another. This concept of mutuality is best expressed by the Jain maxim of Parasparo Pagraho Jivanam, meaning that all life is bound together by mutual support and interdependence. A disruption to any one part of this ecosystem could result in severe, often devastating disturbances to other parts. Humans, believed to be the most intelligent species on Earth, are often the worst perpetrators of these disturbances through acts of violence, hatred, animal cruelty, and other acts against the environment, ecology, and other living beings. Lord Mahavira, the 24th Tirthankara and founder of the contemporary Jain tradition, explained this over 2,500 years ago. His scriptures proclaim that we should not harm or destroy any being which breathes, exists, or has any potential of life. This revelation is at the heart of ahimsa, or nonviolence, the bedrock of Jain philosophy. Every tenet of Jainism is based on the concepts of nonviolence and compassion. Jain practitioners believe that the erosion in one's conduct is related to their actions in mind, body, and speech under the influence of attachment, malice, and the four destructive passions of anger, ego, deceit, and greed. However, it is in our hands to control our actions and stop this destructive behavior. These Jain teachings have existed forever and apply to all living beings of all times. They provide methods to subdue the destructive passions and facilitate their adoption into daily life. Practitioners, Jain or not, can enhance their self-discipline, reinforce their belief in their self, and strengthen the characteristics of nonviolence and compassion. At our best, these teachings prepare us to serve the collective rather than just our individual selves. Arihanta Academy strives to democratize these inspirational teachings with a world-class online education platform for those interested in learning. Our renowned scholars from around the world facilitate studies in Jain philosophy, ethics, history, anthropology, art, and yoga to advance your understanding and ability to live by Jain principles in modern society. By facilitating holistic and critical online education in Jain studies, Arihanta Academy aims to play an important role in the betterment of society and our planet. Jain teachings may be ancient, but their application to modern life is as relevant as centuries ago. During his time, Lord Mahavira taught and convinced the masses to stop animal cruelty, discrimination, destruction to the environment, and other social evils for the betterment of society. In recent times, peaceful crusaders like Mahatma Gandhi and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. studied Jain teachings and effectively deployed nonviolent tactics to win against their hostile adversaries. Currently, social justice movements like veganism, animal rights, and environmental sustainability are growing from teachings of nonviolence and compassion. The profound teachings of Jain wisdom remains as relevant to modern living as it did millennia ago. At Arihanta Academy, you will learn it, understand it, and know how to apply it in everyday life.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Dr. Praveen.
Thank you.
Yeah, such a beautiful video, and I think we were getting some comments in the chat as well with similar sentiments. I think there's so much going on in the world, right? In terms of both the injustices that are happening, as well as evolving conversations. And I think a lot of us are wondering, how can we apply Jainism into these modern conversations? For example, we talk about social justice, right? Things that are happening in various countries. We talk about, racism, sexism. We also talk about mental health, right? And where does Jainism fall into that? There's a whole conversation about animal rights activism, right? What are we doing to animals and the animal agriculture industry? And I think just in general, there's so many spaces where we can apply Jainism in a modern setting. And I think this could be such a great way to connect with the Jain youth that does care about these issues. And so, with that being said, I just want to thank you again. Thank Arihanta Academy for this beautiful video, as well as what they're doing for the global Jain community, making Jain education accessible for everyone. And this is for all people, which, is truly democratizing Jainism at a global level. And so, with that being said, before I kind of continue forward, I do want to give the panelists a chance to introduce themselves. We have quite a diverse panel today. We have Jain leaders from various different organizations representing Arihanta Academy, the Global Jain Network, Young Jain Professionals, and Young Jains of America, as well as many others, including Jain Connect as well. So we have quite a slew of Jain organizations, and this is global, by the way. So while we have a heavy presence in North America, we also are, in various other countries around the world. And so, really great. And I think we have really the perfect opportunity to have this really important conversation. And I think I'm hoping that what we get out of this conversation could be passed along to leaders of Jain derasars, to Jain parents, to Bachelor teachers, to anyone that has the ability to impact the youth and to help bring our message forward. We hope that this message goes to them as well. So with that being said, I will go ahead and start by, maybe I'll introduce myself and then I'll go to the panel. So a little bit about myself. My name is Sunny Jain. I'm a lifetime member of the Jain Society of Houston. So that's kind of where I grew up and raised most of my life. Most recently I was, on the executive board of Young Jain Professionals. And most recently we started a group called the Global Jain Network. This is during the midst of the pandemic where I think everyone was locked in their homes and we really just wanted to find a way to connect Jains. And so, it started off as a small group of friends and it grew, very quickly. And we're just so grateful for, how far we've come since then. About that, I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic then to Dr. Varun, and then we'll follow that by Dr. Praveen, and then Arpit, Riya, and then Dr. Miller. And so, Dr. Varun, if you want to kick things off by introducing yourself, share a little bit about who you are, and maybe your association with the Jain community.
Sure. Thank you so much, Sunny. Jai Janendra, everyone. Love and abundance. First of all, I want to thank Sunny Jain for doing such a wonderful job with the Global Jain Network. In such a short time, he's able to connect tens of thousands of Jains from across the world. And I think it's phenomenal what he's able to do during the pandemic. So thank you so much for creating this platform, Sunny. So myself, I am essentially in the holistic health and wellness, helping people live a better life. As my association to the Jain community is, I started as a Yga Convention volunteer not too long ago. Like many of the people here have been longtime volunteers. I actually just got into volunteering for Jain related events in the last, let's say 5-6 years. So I volunteered at the Yga Convention, the last 2 Yga Conventions, and then I'm also the past co-chair of Jain Connect. And recently, 2022, we kind of shifted to new co-chairs. So that's all from me. Thank you so much, Sunny. Thank you, everyone. Jai Janendra.
Thank you so much. We'll pass the mic to Dr. Praveen, and I know Dr. Praveen, you had a chance to introduce yourself, but if you want to just quickly share your association with the Jain community, and then we can pass the mic to Arpit.
Yeah, Jain, once again, I've been associated with Jain community, actually nationwide, North America nationwide community, but within the local, I'm from San Francisco, San Jose, California, so Jain Center of Northern California, led the project to build our temple around 22 years ago. The project actually started in 1995. So I just quit my job. I left everything aside and devoted my time to building the temple. So that's, I've done a number of startups. I've been an entrepreneur all my life. I've done a number of startups, but my best startup is Jain Center of Northern California. And then Arihanta Academy is my second best startup that we are just launching. So it's great to see you guys. I'm just going to stop it here, but thank you very much, everybody, for coming on the board today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Praveen, once again, for all your contributions to the Jain community. That is incredible. Next, we're going to pass the mic to Arpit. Arpit, please feel free to introduce yourself and share a little bit about who you are.
Jai Jirendra, everyone. I'm Arpit Mehta. And again, first of all, thank you, Sunny, for hosting this panel, and thank you Arihanta Academy for bringing together a lot of Jain values in a modern sense together, and a lot of efforts from Dr. Praveen, Dr. Miller, and all the people who are associated with Arihanta Academy. I'm really thankful that it's a great step in the direction of kind of democratizing the Jain values and giving access to everybody around the world these values in the sense of not just what is taught as per text, but how you apply it in your practical life. So many thanks for that. My association with Jain community, as I grew up, as a Jain, but I was very rebellious in the beginning. I used to question everything in terms of like, why I'm doing this, why are you stopping me from doing something in Paryushan, why I have to fast, all of these things. So very, curious, but question oriented. And initially I didn't have a lot of answers. So I started to explore, read more, understand where it was coming from, and then it kind of came naturally to me. So I was associated with YJA first in 2010. I started the board to join the board as director of education, and then I was part of the convention committee as well. Then I joined YJP, and currently I'm the advisory board of Young Jain Professional. In my professional life, I am a cancer scientist, bioinformatician, working with like a lot of cancer data sets, understanding different types of cancer and how we can suggest remedies from that, and moving towards precision medicine. So that's from me for now, but I'm glad to be part of this panel. Thank you, Sunny.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Arpit. Next, we'll pass the mic to Riya.
Jai Jirendra, everyone. My name is Riya Salva. I just want to also start off by saying thank you so much to Arihanta Academy and to Sunny for hosting and putting together such an important event. I am originally from Massachusetts, so we went to Jain Center of Greater Boston as well as JSNE. Over the past 6 or 7 years ago, moved out to the Bay Area, and I'm currently in San Francisco. So have been able to benefit from the hard work of Praveen Uncle and enjoy the Jain Center of Northern California, and have found a community there as well. In terms of my involvement with the Jain community, I am currently the co-chair of YJA, Young Jains of America, and the thinking about how to engage youth into Jainism is my day-to-day, thinking how we can get kids as early as 14 years to be connected with their community, to find people with shared values, and to explore and question further into their own morality. Before that, I co-founded the Jain Students Association at UC Berkeley, and it was our first kind of way of bringing together Jains, and we actually grew into a more than 100-person community filled with both Jains and non-Jains. So I've definitely seen firsthand the benefit of bringing both together. We were able to start a college course in Jainism at the university, and I'm also one of the co-founders of Jains for Justice, which is a social justice oriented organization that grew out of the Black Lives Matter movement, as well as the pandemic over the past couple of years, and focuses on how do we leverage Jain principles to further social justice initiatives.
Wonderful. Thank you, Riya, for sharing that. Finally, we'll pass the mic to Dr. Miller. Dr. Miller, if you want to introduce yourself and share a little bit about who you are.
Jai Jirendra, everyone, and greetings from Switzerland. from the Alps. I want to give you a little background here to look at. Well, I tell you just a little bit about myself. I first came in touch with the Jain tradition as an undergraduate at Loyola Marymount University. I then went to study with the International School for Jain Studies in Delhi and Rajasthan for a long period of time in the summer of 2012. And I already had a love for the Jain tradition, but it really kind of cemented my commitment. I'm a longtime practitioner of yoga. I eventually went and did my PhD after a long career in accounting in religious studies, where I studied yoga in the Jain tradition. And I started teaching the Jain tradition in the university. And as I was doing that last year, I was asked by members of Jaina to teach a course to young Jains to kind of re-inspire them to commit to their tradition. And to be honest with you, it's not something I ever thought I would do. I was a university professor teaching Jain tradition to mostly non-Jains, but I took the challenge, and I really learned so much, and I became so inspired by the young Jain community and all of the ambitions that they have. And I'm even inspired listening to all of you right now, Riya and all the rest of you, the things you're saying about social justice, because this is exactly my sort of background comes from commitment to environment, commitment to animals. I'm a vegan, and I do these things because of my Jain studies, okay? In last year, some of you probably know, I adopted the middle name Jain at the invitation of the Jain community during an event with Jaina, and I'm honored to do so, and I'm honored to sort of bring these Jain teachings to the Jain youth in a way that makes sense to them and that applies to everyday life. So what I would really love for all the people who are listening here, all the Jain youth, if there's something you're interested in studying here at Arihanta Academy, I'm the Chief Academic Officer, and I want to know what you want to know, because we have all of this knowledge sort of locked up in the ivory tower of academia. It's waiting to be discovered. And as everyone has said here, the world is in such a crazy state right now. And even the political things that are happening here in Europe right now, believe it or not, are religiously motivated from various traditions. And so what that shows you is that religious traditions can have an effect on the world, for better or worse. And I really think the Jain tradition has the answers to a lot of the major issues that we're facing. So please reach out to me if there's anything you want to know. And I'm so honored to be here. And thank you so much, Sunny and Global Jain Network. It's been an honor always working with you and spreading the message.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. And thank you, everyone, once again. I think if there was ever a group of people that I would want to speak to about this topic, I think we found the perfect group. I think all of you in your own rights have this, have the influence as well as the knowledge to help us tackle this very complex problem of trying to engage the Jain youth. And so before I begin, I just want to paint a very short story. This is my story, right? And I think it's going to resonate with others, especially those born in North America and perhaps globally as well. But I think similar to Arpit, I was maybe rebellious younger growing up. My parents used to force me to come to derasar every Sunday for bacha class. And, I kind of, followed the footsteps of your typical American-born Jain, who half-heartedly participated in Jain youth events, before just completely disconnecting when I went to college. When I was in college, and this is something I wasn't even that proud of. I always wanted to go to derasar, but I realized all right, maybe next month I'll go, or maybe the following month I'll go, or maybe I'll come during Mahavira once a year, right? But slowly I started realizing that eventually it just came to maybe once a year I'd come to show my face, and then I'd kind of just leave to just to get my darshan in, right? And I think a lot of youth will kind of resonate with that sentiment. And sadly, I wasn't the only one. And I wonder what is making our generation disconnect from the Jain community. Like I had done their age, right? Is it the absence of English-oriented lectures and community events? Is there, which is creating, communication barriers for American-born speakers? Is it the lack of youth activities at derasars, right? Is there just nothing to do when you go there? Or is there just not enough opportunities? And so I guess, when we think about this forgotten demographic of Jains between the ages of maybe 14 and 30, I wonder what is causing this disconnect, right? What is causing Jains to be less interested in Jainism overall as a religion, or maybe derasars in general, or maybe just volunteering within our community? And so I realize that's a very broad question. And so I'll kind of just go up and throw that to the floor. And if anyone wants to kind of kick off this conversation, please feel free to unmute.
I think one thing I would say is, this is a shared conversation. Arpit, Sunny, both of you guys had this growing experience, and I'm kind of in the same boat as well. Growing up, I was in Dubai, born and brought up there. We had a pathshala there, and once a month we would meet. And even though it was just once a month, I didn't want to go there. I didn't care to go there because, hey, they would make me sit in front of the teachers and memorize a bunch of words that I didn't have an understanding of what it meant. It's just memorize it, come next class, make sure you know how to say it, and repeat it word for word, but don't worry about the meaning. So that kind of didn't give me an incentive to go to pathshala. Now I don't know how things are over here. I haven't been to a pathshala in America, and so I'm not sure what's the collective experience in North America for that. But I feel like having maybe some fun activities, because I don't remember in the Dubai pathshala, I mean, this is again way back in the 90s, having any fun activities. It was maybe free food, that's probably it. But I feel like having some more kind of get-togethers or social activities outside of the studying environment would benefit the kids to come, and that way even their parents would be interested in visiting the pathshala as well.
Yeah, Varun, I agree with what you just said. It resonates pretty much because the pathshala, when I was in India, I did the pathshala in India. It's all about your class, or your progression was decided based on how much you know. If you know Pratikaman, you're like third standard. If you move up, you know all of these sutras and everything. And I did not know a single meaning of the word. And I used to ask, I told you my rebelness was more curious. So I used to ask, what is the meaning of this? Like the only thing I knew the complete meaning of from Prakrit to everything was Navkar mantra, and that was credit to one of the calendars which we had in our place, which translated Navkar mantra word to word, and that was my only way. So when I was doing Navkar mantra, I actually knew what I was doing at that time and what it meant. But overall, I think this kind of creates a disconnect because you're just like making the text available, making the people read it and memorize it. And you're rated as a good Jain, because as a kid, I did not know what is the criteria. You're rated as a good Jain because if you know, your cousin, he knows all of these mantra, he can do Pratikaman. And I could never resonate with it, how that kind of placed me in the structure in a good or a bad Jain, right? So what really actually, one activity I remember was we went to a Goshala, which is like a Pinjarapol. Goshala is like, cow shelter where the cows and everything were there. And there I learned that, okay, we are helping them. All the cows who are like let go by their owners, old cows are coming there. And that kind of resonated more with me. And then I realized a lot of Jains were supporting that. So that was kind of my idea. Okay, now this is what compassion actually truly is. And in my understanding in various Jain temples, and I'm associated with the Jain Center of South Florida in Miami. And I believe the activities where kids come there, and then we take them to cow shelter or places where we are rescuing animals or saving something, and then teach them the meaning of compassion, they will learn ahimsa much better that way.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think when I think about youth engagement in Jainism, there's sort of two separate things. I think one is engagement with like the Jain principles and Jain community, and the second is engagement with the derasar. And in YJA, we work with kids between the ages of 14 and 29. And over the past few years, we've just seen an exponential rise in the number of kids who are interested in that community and in those values. And meanwhile, I do see that, derasars, they're located in every community. Sometimes it's hard for people to connect at a national scale all the time. And so those local touch points are extremely important. And so it's very valuable to continue figuring out how to engage people at the derasar level. But just thinking about the first group for a second, like what makes it so that people like want to get involved in YJ or like want to connect more with fellow Jains or connect more with their values? I think it's because they find a community that represents them and looks like them. And sometimes within the derasar, my personal experiences is that often the leadership doesn't have as many young people in it, doesn't have as many American-born people on it. It's harder to see yourself in those spaces and feel like this is a space that belongs for me. Similarly, I think we talk about how we want to, follow more Jain values and apply them in our real life and apply them to social justice issues. And I think that is topics that really resonate with youth. but they want to see more of in derasars. Like, can we see a derasar going fully like carbon neutral? Can we see a derasar offering only vegan food? Can we see a derasar, like Arpit was saying, go on these volunteering trips and do active seva in the community? If we find that those same touch points that are resonating with people through the YJ communities are also present in the Jain communities, we see more gender and age diversity and geographic diversity in Jain leadership, then those start feeling like spaces where youth actually empathize with, resonate with, and feel like they belong in. So I think that as a side effect of all these things, we will have more fun activities. We will have bachelor sessions that aren't focused on memorization, but it's important to get at the core of the issue, which is like, how do we fundamentally change the structure of these organizations to better reflect the youth and what they care about?
Seems like one common theme I'm seeing is a hands-on approach, like having a, hey, let's put this into practice as opposed to just studying it from the books, right? And like going out there and doing things. So one of the things that we're currently doing is we were part with Dr. Miller, we were part of the Hot Meals drive last year, and we're continuing doing this. So this is essentially we're creating 1,500, 2,000 meals every weekend and donating it to the homeless population and people living out on the streets and the seniors and elders and disabled and anyone who needs meals. That's our way of putting compassion into food and distributing out into the community. So I feel like that would, and then we've kind of talked to the local Jain Center here and asked for volunteers to come in. So they send us volunteers every month to help us with these meals. So in that sense, they're getting a lot of benefit from participating in something like this and seeing that this is Jain principle in action.
I think, and these are some incredible points. I think, kind of just to go back to what Riya said, because I think that really did resonate with me, and I'm sure with a lot of people as well. I think first is the idea of representation, right? In the leadership of derasars, right? Seeing people that look similar to you, allowing, younger people to have active roles in, Jain derasars and to represent, different creeds and different types of Jains, right? And then I think to that point, if you go to any, and I'll kind of play the perspective of a Jain derasar leader, right? Like, my mom was, formerly the president of the Jain Society of Houston. And so, I used to hear kind of the conversations that were happening over there at a local level, like at a very local derasar level. And that is honestly the conversation they always have. Like, how do we get the youth involved? How do we, they're really just honestly, doing anything possible to get the youth involved. But then they're at the same point, there's also this hesitance to evolve with, certain conversations as well. So I think Riya mentioned, why don't we, serve vegan food at Jain derasars? I think, there would be a lot of pushback right now in most Jain derasars if that conversation was even brought up. If we talked about, let's have, something where, let's have a conversation about social justice, I think there would be a lot of pushback as well at Jain derasars, right, at a local level. And so while there's kind of one sense where we do want to get the youth involved, there's also kind of a hesitance for that modernization. And I do wonder, and I'm kind of asking as a question, if, as a youth, right, if I'm right now, maybe in high school, or maybe I'm in college, right, that'd be a better example. And I walk into derasar right now, how do I feel? Do I feel like derasar is my home? Is this a place where I can be comfortable, that I can meet others, connect with like-minded Jains? Or is this a place where I walk in and I'm always, I'm looking for food. I'm looking for vegan food right now because they don't serve any, right? Or, I see that there's gender discrimination, that there's a big divide between males and females. Or I see there's a big divide between, certain traditions, Digambar, Shwetambar, in some temples, which I think a lot of youth have, different conversations about as well. And so how am I feeling as a Jain youth walking into a derasar right now? If anyone wants to share any thoughts on that, or to what any other conversations were.
So, Sunny, if I could just relate a story to you guys. In 1991, we were doing Siddhachalam Pratishtha. As many of you know, Siddhachalam is in New Jersey. And Guruji was obviously the motivator at that time. So he said, I need to involve youth in this. To him, he always said that youth is future. and we have to make sure our future is protected. Okay, so to involve youth, even at that age, he said, okay, I'm going to hand over all the parking arrangements to youth. You know what? He appointed a 16 years old high school young man as the head of parking team. And this young man assembled a team of about 20 different young people ranging from 10 years to 16 years who manage parking. One of the things that came back is we don't want people to park on grass. Okay, so then the idea was, how do we take care of that? So they brought some plastic sheets, laid it on grass, because everywhere at Siddhachalam at that time we didn't have too many roads and all that. So laid plastic sheets on grass and then let people park over there. So this is, to me, the learning lesson was we need to let youth run the way they want to run it, and they'll do a great job. Okay, that is where our Jain community, particularly the first immigrant community, we have to learn how to let youth run they want to run it. Okay, that's very important, and there's no doubt wherever youth are doing and leading, and actually our youth are not little kids now; they are running companies. We need to let them run Jain centers.
Yeah, that's such a great point, Parveen uncle. I've had an opposite experience in the sense that, so I was running the youth organization for Gujarati Society of Southern California locally here. So not really Jain related, but it's kind of going back to your point of the organization had 4 elderly gentlemen who were the main 4 positions. And after 4 years, they didn't want to let go of their seats, and so they didn't want to let the youth come in. At this point, there are a couple of us youth who had active participation and could actually have taken up positions in the top 4, but they didn't allow that just because they didn't want to let go control of it. So I completely agree that letting go of control is a big point that I feel like we need to get better at.
I absolutely agree, Varun. And to Dr. Praveen's point, this kind of change when I was 18, and at that time everything looked like it related to sanghs and derasars and temples and boards. There was no say whatsoever. I couldn't go and say that, hey, why is this thing this way? There's a set pattern, and this is how it happened. When I joined YJ, I realized at that age, I was given a responsibility to hold a convention, and I was having to have hospitality managed for 700 youth all together. And that kind of empowered me and challenged me, got me out of my kind of comfort zone, and I took on this responsibility to do that. And it changed me as a person, as a leader. My values of Jainism kind of shown from inside rather than taking it outside. So it's a very, very valid point that the leadership positions or responsibilities should be given and not be told. So, they should be able to decide how they want to handle these things and start with small things and then grow further from there. And other thing which I was saying, that always the narrative is around whether you know Jainism or not. It shouldn't be. It should be, this is our youth. They're going to colleges. They're making their life decisions. They're starting companies. They can actually decide what is good or bad for them. And it doesn't happen in terms of when we go and praise our ideas up there in the temple. And many times I'm not even allowed to go and raise funds. If I'm doing a vegan initiative in my college, they're like, no, this is only do Jain funds or Jain derasar oriented funds here. And when you're going into the dinners and everything, most of the time, you hear people saying that, hey, they're just here for the lunches. But we want to create engagement. So we want to provide them opportunities to do their college activities in derasar. They need to come and do these fundraising, even if it's doing for supporting an initiative worldwide. They need to come to their derasar, to their people. They should feel home at derasar.
Thank you, Arvind. And I'll just kind of jump in because I have heard that a lot. And even in these WhatsApp groups, I always like to throw these questions in there. And if you ask someone right now, how do we get the Jain youth involved? I kid you not, usually the conversation is we should start having Jain tacos every Sunday, and then there'll be great food and that'll bring the youth in. And so I think even the idea of how do we get youth involved is so different from the way our approach is, right? And so, I actually do want to give Dr. Miller a chance to maybe share his thoughts as well on either this conversation about representation or just in general, how we can get Jains involved at derasars.
Yeah, thanks, Sunny, for inviting me in. I mean, I don't have the youth experience of being in the derasar as you all do, but the thing is I always hear these same conversations in so many circles of the young Jains that I speak with or that I educate, that there's a certain sense of them wanting to take a more active role, but not always feeling empowered. But when they do, and I've heard these stories from you all on several occasions, when they do feel empowered to take on a role, they jump on the opportunity, and it often leads to some kind of positive result for them in showing them that, like, I can do this. So I think that there needs to be a sense of empowerment across the board, and less of a sense of kind of talking down to the youth, like, we got this. Because on the one hand, I see the youth have such a deep respect for the elders in the community. On the other hand, they feel frustrated sometimes with their hands tied behind their back. And what I've really loved to see over the past year and a half and during the pandemic is how youth have come together through these platforms such as Global Jain Network to kind of take their reins on their own and say, these are the issues that are important to us, and we're going to start talking about them and educating ourselves and others about them. So it's really, it's an important topic, and it's why we're here today. And I just want to say that really, I think education is critical to this, also for the Jain youth to understand how important and how their principles actually relate to everyday questions and everyday life. So that's part of what we're going to do at Arihanta Academy as well. And I know it's what you do at the Global Jain Network as well, or what we do at the Global Jain Network. And often at the center of these discourses, if I may just take a moment to answer the question that Vivek put in the chat on this, just to give you a sense of how I think Jain principles relate to everyday life. So Vivek asked the question about the trolley problem. And some of you probably know what the trolley problem is, but imagine you're standing along a train track, a trolley track, and there's a trolley or a train coming down that track. Now that train can go one of two ways. It can either keep going straight as it's going to go, and it will run over 5 people or 10 people or however many people who are tied to the track, and those people will die, right? On the other hand, there's a lever, and you are standing, imagine yourself, you are standing next to this lever. You can divert the train to go another direction, and it will only kill one person who's tied to the track, right? Now, this is a very sort of abstract question. I don't know anyone who's ever been in that situation before. It's a Western philosophical question, but in my mind, the Jain tradition asks this question about everything, because in the Jain tradition, we know that no matter what we do, there's going to be some harm involved, right? Every step we take, every action we take, every decision we make, some form of violence is going to occur, and we're always trying to limit that violence, right? So if you're standing next to the trolley and you're a Jain, that situation may never happen. But imagine, for example, all the questions we're having about the derasars going vegan, right? Now, if the status quo remains, basically the train's going to keep going down the same track, we're going to continue to participate in forms of eating, dietary consumption that are harming so many cows, mother cows all over the world, right? That's the status quo. But the young Jains, this is the point I want to come to sort of answer Vivek's question, that I think the young Jains have the lever in their hand right now to push it the other way so that the train will go down a different track. And that track is to push towards veganism, which of course isn't a perfect solution. There's always going to be violence. You still have to till the earth. Some animals will still die in the fields. Little things will happen, but the vast violence of the dairy industry, for example, will be prevented, and the forms of violence that are experienced will be minimized. And so I think the Jain tradition has the answer to that question, Vivek. And I think that these are the kinds of things that the young Jain community has that lever in their hands. So yeah, that's about all I want to say about that. Thanks, Sonny.
Thank you so much.
I can jump in here. I really appreciate that, Dr. Miller. I think that it touches upon like the broader question of what are the things that youth care about, and how do we bring those conversations into the derasar so that we give them a space to explore those topics. And I think something to note is that regardless of age, there's a deep respect for Jain principles and Jain understanding, but the way in which we, like the youth, choose to understand those sometimes might differ from older generations, in which there's potentially less of a focus on traditions and rituals and more of a focus on, okay, how do I apply these principles and these teachings to my everyday life and to my morality as a individual in the society. And so I think veganism is a really big topic. Another big topic is ethics and animal cruelty. I know that the topics of social justice and how Jainism as a religion prescribes differences between men and women is another one. How we think about gender is another one. Talking about how do you manage being a Jain as well as like going to college or being in a working professional society, and how do you apply your Jain principles on a day-to-day life? That's another one. Young Jains are looking for Jain professional role models all the time. Like, how do I find a woman who's gone and started her own business, because I don't have enough of those role models in my life? And I think if we spend more time actually understanding, like, what are these contemporary problems that are very relevant to young Jains, and how do we bring those conversations into the derasar with an open mind, understanding that, you know, both traditions and sutras and these modern conversations can all coexist and they can all be equally valuable. I think once we do that, that will be a much more inviting space for young Jains to actually come, because they're getting something there that they're really seeking and potentially not having as many outlets to explore in the rest of their lives.
And one thing I would absolutely, I mean, first, I want to agree with what everyone has said so far. Dr. Miller, I think that was an incredible analogy of the trolley problem, right? And how we apply that in everyday lives. I mean, we all learned something from that alone. You know, one thing I realized as I was speaking is these conversations aren't happening at Jain derasars, not even remotely close, right? I think I'm speaking on behalf of a majority of Jain derasars, you know, globally here and in India, that we're not having these conversations about modern issues, as well as the idea of, you know, role models representation. One thing, I want to give huge credit to Young Jains of America for this, because YJA, even maybe, you know, many years ago, when I was like part of YJA as well, I remember that when YJA had an event, there was more people that would go to that event than there would to go to a derasar event. You know, the same city, same everything, but YJA was tackling a problem and catering, or was able to make that connection with the Jain youth that the derasar, you know, 10 minutes away wasn't able to do. And it makes me wonder if there is really a big disconnect between our Jain organizations. So, I mean, I'm thinking about, you know, Jaina and all the subsidiaries of Jaina versus all the local derasars. Is it just completely different worlds, or is there maybe a connection that just needs to be made quickly to kind of bring that all together?
My view is we have to go beyond derasar. I mean, derasar is obviously a key sort of point of everybody together, okay? And we have to keep it that way. But I think we have to look beyond derasars also as to how do we connect our youth with the right kind of initiatives, with the right kind of things that interest them, okay? For example, I think Vivek has been making some suggestions as to, once we talk about all these modern or issues that appeal to young people, I think we need to understand Jain theories behind that also, okay? How does Jain philosophy sort of in those contexts, how does Jain philosophy describes those things? Because these are fundamental to our Jain philosophy and Jain practice. And I think, and what I've personally heard a number of times is, because of many reasons, and I think we don't need to discuss it, many of our youth, when they get out their Pathshala years, where, you know, their parents are taking them, they start disconnecting from sort of Jain community and Jain way of living, I mean, Jain principles in some sense. How do we keep them connected to that? Okay, that is very important, okay? I don't think we have any specific solutions to that, but I think educating them about the values of Jain philosophy, how it applies to day-to-day life, is one of the major components that can help. Okay, not only them, but then they can talk about Jain philosophy to their kids, their grandkids, because this is going to happen in coming generations. People need to understand Jain philosophy in a different way, how it applies to my day-to-day life, and how do I convey it to my my children, and we are hearing from the youth who have gone in the range of, in the age groups are 40s and 50, where they have their own kids going to schools and colleges. They want to be able to impart their knowledge about Jain philosophy. And this is where learning is very important to stay connected.
Yeah, this is a very great point. And to add to that, it's learning in not in just sense of academic learning, just like you have a textbook and you follow. Like many times when we are having conversations, there are a lot of restrictions which we hear about whenever we talk about Jainism with youth. When I'm talking to somebody, it's like, oh, don't do this, kanda batata is bad, this is bad, all of this, right? And nobody actually comes and tells us that Jainism is actually about justice, it's actually about religious freedom, it's justice to all the souls which are present. So this narrative of the education, the way it is, needs to be changed. People need to know that Jainism is not about restricting you from your diet or all of these things. It's more about embracing everybody the way they are. And this initiative is so important. And when I'm talking to like kids in Pathshala and all of them, when I'm talking about Chedravya, like we were talking about universe or cosmology in Jainism, it's an enticing subject. People love universe. People love to talk about galaxies and stars and all of that. We can't give them a narrow focus on what is the texture saying. They need to have a modern narrative. They need to understand all of these things are said in some context. And that's where education and Arihanta Academy is doing a great job, I believe, coming forward. And I think it's a very important point going forward to learn.
Dr. Miller,
Yeah,
I saw
if I
that you
may.
if you wanted to share something.
Go ahead.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, Dr. Miller, please feel free.
Thank you. Yeah. I want to kind of launch off where Arpit was just talking about, which is that, the pedagogy is important. How we teach these lessons is critical, because like you say, if you're put in front of a textbook and you're shown a bunch of terms, told to memorize the terms, there's not much power behind that. And part of the pedagogy, the way we teach all courses to youth, adults, everyone at Arihanta Academy, is that we invite them in to the course, we engage them with the texts, but then we put the texts first and foremost in conversation with the contemporary situation, right? So whether it's the way we eat, the way we vote, social justice issues, matters of drinking alcohol, all these questions that young Jains have, all Jains really have, we ask them in light of the Jain tradition, but we also ask the Jains themselves in the course to talk to each other about the challenges that they have. And so it's kind of a triangulated thing between the professor, the teachers, and the text and the issue, where you're really bringing the teachings down to a very real situation in the classroom and saying, like, does this make sense? Do these Jain teachings even make sense? And the truth is they do, but you can only understand them if you put them in conversation with something that you've actually been through in your everyday life. So I know Arpit and Ashi are preparing a course right now similar to the one that I'm teaching, applying these Jain principles in daily life. And that's what people can expect when they come into the classroom. Thanks.
I guess this is a great way to segue to the conversation about Jain education and learning, and Jain Dharma in general. I think Dr. Praveen, Arpit, and Dr. Miller did a great job of sharing the importance of both what like the subject matter as well as how it is taught to our Jain youth. And I think it was mentioned earlier how for a lot of us, the way we learned Jainism was in a very black and white kind of way, right? It was obviously food restrictions, it was memorization, and it was oftentimes our abhishek and our rituals, not realizing why we're doing these things, not realizing that even when we do pujas, they all represent something, they have different symbolism, and that you can apply these Jain principles to these conversations and make that conversation. And I realize that we say that kind of lightly, and I know it's a very difficult subject, right? Having been like a assistant Pathshala teacher, just even hanging out in that room, I can tell you how challenging it is to keep people interested and engaged in such a way. And I know, and I do want to give credit to Pathshala teachers. They're doing really hard work in trying to come up with a Sunday lesson to get the youth involved. But as everyone said, it's a very challenging topic, and it may partly be due to just the lack of content out there, that is, kind of modernly structured. in such a way, because we're working off books that, maybe from many years ago. And, there's certain conversations that, we haven't incorporated into it. And then part of it may be, I think, a language barrier as well. I think for a lot of Jain youth, we read English, right? And so if our education and scripture or text is in, Hindi or Gujarati, that causes a big challenge for a lot of Jains, at least in North America speaking. And, I'm sure there's many other kind of, barriers that make Jain education a little bit more challenging. I guess I kind of want to throw it in the group. Does anyone have any thoughts on, how can we make Jain education accessible, or if you want to answer why it matters, like why does it matter that we keep Jain education at the forefront of these conversations, and how does that even connect to getting Jain youth involved?
I think
I can, go ahead.
Dr. Miller, go.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Varun. I devoted myself to being an educator because there's the cliche that's so true, that knowledge is power. And when you have real knowledge, like truly deeply experienced knowledge in your body, in your mind, and you're able to really integrate it properly, then you've become more powerful. You feel more powerful. You feel more empowered to make correct decisions and to back them up, right? And so once you kind of internalize these Jain teachings in a way that actually completely relate to your everyday life, you can walk around more confidently as a Jain, or even if you're not Jain, right? There's going to probably be people in these classes who are not Jain as well, interested in the Jain tradition. You walk out and you feel that you have an ethical theory, you have moral principles that are grounded in something very deep and very rich and very ancient. And that feeling and that sense of being able to internalize that gives you a sense of confidence to walk in the world in a much better way, and also to inspire others to be better. So knowledge is power. That's what I want to say. And we know knowledge in the Jain tradition is what it's all about. So thanks.
It's like that rudder on a boat where it gives you direction, moving in the right direction. And that's what the Jain principles are. I feel like, another way, like I think Riya has done a great job at UC Berkeley of incorporating, I just saw her comment where she started an organization, hundreds of members, Jain and non-Jain, and taught a lesson on modern Jainism, where she conducted bi-weekly discussions on contemporary topics and several social events. I feel like that kind of environment at different college campuses would help Jains and non-Jains come together and learn this rich tradition, this knowledge that we have that people can benefit from. I mean, a lot of current like nonviolence came from Jainism, right? So a lot of principles out there have their roots in Jainism, and I feel like people knowing more about it will help them, like guide them in the right direction.
Yeah, I completely agree with like the value of Jain education. I think from a youth perspective, there's a lot of question of like how much of how we practice Jainism today is based off of traditions that have been passed down versus what's in the texts and what like Mari Bhagwan and like our forefathers of the religion had actually described. And I think answering those questions will help bring a lot of clarity on some of these like modern day topics, questions that people have, like, Russia and Ukraine war, like what's the right thing to do there? Like, what does the actual text say versus like, what are just traditions that we have been following, specifically with like women in the temple and when they can come or not come, like what does the actual text say versus what is a learned tradition? So I think answering those questions specifically, it's very valuable to have in-depth knowledge about this. I think one question for the group is that how do we break the inertia and actually motivate people to take the initiative to learn? And I think that will be a big challenge sometimes, because people, like, kids have gone around, their parents made them go to Bachala, you exit and you're like, okay, I know Jainism now, I know enough. And how do you basically convince kids like, okay, there's so much more that hasn't been covered in Bachala that is worth exploring and worth taking time out of your busy college schedules, job schedules, to actually dedicate yourself to something such as this. So I think that's one question for the group that's worth discussing.
Great. Sunny, if I may add a couple of things. I think Jain education, in my view, is very important because I missed it. Okay. And I realized it when I was in 40s, that I wish I had learned about Jain, even Namokar mantra. Okay, uh, it we don't have to go to the level that everybody tries to get a degree, but have enough understanding that you know why I need to be vegan, why I need to be compassionate. Okay, what are the benefits out of that? Okay, I think these are the kind of things we need to learn. And again, I'm not trying to pitch Arihanta Academy here, but at the same time, I'm doing it. This is what we want to do at Arihanta Academy. We want to impart education in a ways that you can say, I can see it, why I need to take this course and learn what Jain philosophy teaches me about this particular subject. Okay, and the only way I see we will succeed is if we get guidance from youth like yourself, that here are the courses which are important, here are the courses, that's the way they should be taught. Obviously, in our plan, we are going towards an accredited university. I mean, it'll take us 5-7 years, whatever time it takes, we're going to get there. Okay, we are committed. Our team is committed to get there. But along the way, we want to make sure we are always there to provide knowledge at the level youth want to understand, so that after they graduate from high school, they don't say, I don't need to learn anymore. They should feel curious. Then I need to know, I need to learn more about this particular subject. It doesn't have to be the entire Jain philosophy, but even if you take each subject, each chapter, it's very important in its own way. We want to make sure that curiosity always stays when they get out of the Pathshala, because learning never stops. I can tell you from experience, learning never stops and it should never stop. And that is where we want to create this accessible, so that no matter what time, no matter how you want to do, no matter from where you want to reach it, have it and learn it on their own pace.
Excellent point, Praveen Uncle. I agree. And then it's just not the youth. We need to educate our adults as well. We need these courses need to be actually, attended by parents. Because if they understand it the way it is taught in these, and they talk the language of the kids, they can actually make an impact. Then there was a good point there, like how can we influence kids instead of forcing them? First, educate yourself, understand what their needs are. What are they trying to achieve in their life? Is their goals aligning with that? They're looking for their careers. They're looking for somebody to talk to as a mental health. So as a community, and I'm adding this as an additional point to kind of consider. Vivek mentioned that what are we learning from other communities? In Christian churches, people are going, they're not talking about religion. They're talking about, hey, what's wrong with you? Are you okay with your career? Do you need any help? Financially? Do you need any help in terms of mentorship? Do you need any help in which we can provide you mental health without talking to your parents? And this impact lasts longer than once they graduate, just by the Pathshala, because they know that their community is there for them. So we need to just not narrow our focus with Jainism, but of course, with the right knowledge, we want to increase the scope and making Jain centers and even individuals like us be available to other Jain kids and everybody, and impart those things to them, what they are actually seeking. And then they will obviously learn about Jainism. They'll be like, what motivates you to help me? That's Jainism. So then we need to set leadership examples there.
That's such a great point, Arpit. I just felt like I'm a bobblehead, like just nodding with everything, because it was, I can't say anything better. When I read that question, that was the first thing that came to mind, is the parents have to educate themselves first before, and then they can then start talking that language to their kids. And that's how the kids will, I wouldn't call it like influenced is, I don't know if that's the right word, but that's how you can, help the kids move along in Jainism as well. And then also sharing stories, the Jainism story books, and reading more about it, because I think kids can gain a lot of lessons from reading stories as opposed to reading scriptures. So I feel like having an emphasis on storytelling and sharing Jain stories would strengthen this their connection with Jainism.
And I think in 2022, right, I think we have a very unique opportunity with technology to really make these ideas into reality. Maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I had no idea what Zoom was. Like, honestly, not an idea. And then we were all hit with the pandemic. and suddenly I'm in class, doing classes from Zoom, learning and having, like these effective conversations and, communications through a virtual platform. I think a lot, prior to, 2019, our only access to Jainism was either through our derasars, which, we've kind of discussed some of the challenges that we had there, and through, and then through, of course, our umbrella organizations, which have done a great job, in kind of connecting, Jains and that, in whichever capacity they could. But I think, now we have an opportunity to bring Jain education to everyone, to make it more accessible, and to have these modern conversations using the virtual platforms that we have for us, and all these new organizations that are really doing a lot to kind of bring Jains together. So, and so, as everyone was speaking, I was actually taking down a few notes on like important points that just really resonated with me. For me, I can, share right off the bat. So if you like, what we can do is we can share a few key takeaways, and then we can go into Q&A. And if anyone has time to stay longer, please feel free. We can go that way. So if I had to tell you what have I learned or taken from this conversation, I think one thing that really resonated at the very early conversation is empowering the youth. We need to allow the youth to take leadership positions, both at the Jaina, the umbrella level, as well as at Jain derasars. We want to have representation. We want to have people from different backgrounds and give them a chance to lead Jain organization as well, because they just as much have the both the ability as well as the right to be able to lead our Jain religion as well. We had a conversation about having modern conversations within Jainism, things that are affecting us today in today's world. We talked about, different social justice issues. We talked about things that are happening in the world that we would want to know about. For example, there's a war going on in Ukraine right now. How do we even feel about that, right? Like as Jains, and how should Jainism tell us that we should feel about it, right? We talked about the importance of Jain education and learning, that we need to start at a very early level and provide modernized, engaging, and interactive education to the Jain youth. We need to build this inertia, get them involved at an early age. And of course, when they hit that gap, which we all know is when they hit college, that's when most Jains disconnect for a short period. When they hit that gap, we double down on getting them engaged, getting them involved, ensuring that even if they go out to the real world and they are faced with opportunities or different, obstacles, we can say, that Jainism is still a part of their life. And of course, when they reach, in their late 30s and they start having kids, then how do we bring them, when they come back, that we bring them back in the Jain Dharma as well, right? We talked about the idea of role models, that we should have role models in our community. And I know a lot of us can resonate with this, but if I was at derasar and I had someone that was a little bit older than me, that kind of helped guide me through the career process, through the college application process, or through life in general. If I had someone that I can call right now that's from the Jain community and say, hey, I'm going through something, just want to hear your advice. I mean, that could be such an impactful thing in my personal life, right? And that could be for so many others as well. And then, and I think Arpit had such a great point, get the parents involved as well, because parents have a huge role in bringing the kids to Pacha. And so like the early kind of the satirical story of being dragged into Pacha, we need those parents doing that, right? And we need them being just as informed as well. So when the kids do bring up conversations, that parents are equipped with the knowledge and the ability to have those conversations. And so right off the bat, that is, and among many other things, by the way, that was said, I'll keep going. Dr. Miller had mentioned the trolley, kind of the analogy of how we apply Jainism into every modern conversation, that Jainism can be truly applied everywhere. We talked about the ability to leverage changing technology, such as, Zoom. And of course, we use Clubhouse a lot. Conversations as well. And so with that being said, what I'll do now is, sorry, that was a little bit long, but I wanted to just make sure that I hit a lot of the important points that were mentioned just in this 1 hour conversation, which I thought was incredible. And so if anyone else wants to, from the panel, wants to share any insights that I may have overlooked, maybe something that resonated with you, please feel free to share it. And then we're going to go into Q&A. And so maybe like 1 or 2 points, and then we'll go into Q&A, and then we'll thank everyone and kind of conclude the session. So please feel free to unmute. Thank you.
I think that was a great summary. I think the only point I'll add is I think underlying all of these different changes that we need to do, there has to be like a big appetite for change and like a general openness towards change. And I think that's the one thing that I've seen be like a critical inflection point in most of these derasar communities or Jain institutions in general, is that we think 100 times before making any change, even at the YJ level. So just thinking like, okay, if these are our goals and it's something that collectively everyone cares a lot about, then how do you increase that tolerance towards doing things differently in a way that might deviate from how things have been done in the past, but be oriented to a stronger future?
Thank you, Riya, for sharing that. I guess we may have covered everything. If no one else has any other thoughts, we can go into the Q&A. And I realize we are about 10 minutes over time. So if anyone in the panel does have to drop, no worries at all. I just want to thank you all again for your support of this event. I want to thank Arihanta Academy for sponsoring this conversation and sponsoring this room. And, of course, I want to thank Young Jain professionals, our great friends at YJP that have always supported us through all of this. I want to thank YJA, Young Jains of America. I want to thank Jains for Justice, Jain Connect, and, of course, Global Jain Network as well, for everyone, just, I guess, all of us united for a common goal, and that is to bring Jains together. Whichever walk of life you are in, we want to thank you about that. I do want to give an opportunity to share about our upcoming YJ convention as well. And so I'm going to pass the mic to Riya. Riya, if you want to share a few thoughts about convention, what that may be for those that aren't familiar, and how to get involved.
Absolutely. So I think just in line with all the conversations we've been having today in terms of engaging youth, Young Jains of America is having our biennial convention this summer in July, 4th weekend, open to anyone between the ages of 14 and 29. It is usually a 3-night, 4-day convention where during the daytime, attendees have opportunities to learn about Jain education and have different sessions that kind of touch on all the topics that we talked about today. Both connecting at like the text and fundamental level, but also at a more contemporary level in terms of applying it to modern day topics, professional help, and a slow social connecting. And the evening, we have social events like our Garba, formal and talent show that give opportunities for youth to really connect and form bonds with each other. So that's happening this summer. Registration just launched yesterday. If you feel passionately, as I think the whole group does, about bringing young Jains into Jainism and making them feel connected to the community, I think YJ has done that for me. And that's the reason I'm as involved as I am today. I attended my first convention 10 years ago, and I made friends that have become like the cousins and brothers and sisters that I never had, just a really strong connection across North America and to the values and concepts. So please do consider registration. Reach out to me if you have any questions. And if you're able, financially support us in any way. I think the thing that underlies all this is that there is like an investment component in terms of making these opportunities available to kids. We heavily subsidize these tickets so that as many kids as possible are able to attend. And anything that the community can do to make these experiences more accessible to even more youth will do wonders in bringing Jains back into the community, back into the morals and the concepts, and making them engaged for life. So I'll share the link in the chat, but feel free to reach out if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Riya, for sharing that. And I'll actually kind of just plug that as well, that like Riya, YJ Convention has been such an incredible experience. Lifelong friends from these conventions. And I think I met Arpit and Varun from YJA itself. And, since then, we've, continued to, be great friends and have these conversations through YJ Convention. And so if we ever talked about a way to bring the Jain youth together, I think YJ Convention is the way to do it. Whether you're, within that age range, or if you're a parent, or wherever you are, and you know someone that could be eligible to be a part of this incredible convention and experience, we highly recommend it. This is a once in a year thing, or once in 2 years thing that you wouldn't want to miss. And so thank you again, Riya, for sharing that. I also want to welcome, all the other organizations. If you want to write in the chat, maybe resources on how you can get involved. So, for Arihanta Academy, if you want to share a little bit about how they can get in touch further with Arihanta Academy and maybe get notified of future updates. And I also want to give opportunity to YJP, Jain Connect as well to kind of share that. And then we'll now go ahead and go into the questions. So I'm going to scroll all the way up. I think we've had a lot of incredible comments. And I'm going to try to look for some interesting questions that, that were said during the duration of this session that wasn't covered already. And once again, if you have a question that you haven't wrote down yet, please feel free to do so. I see. Kamlesh Mehta had mentioned, very interested in the views. Is it possible to connect basic Jain teachings in a form which is easily acceptable at primary and high schools? I don't know if that's regarding like the age range or within actual primary and high schools, but you know, if anyone wants to like kind of take that question, please feel free.
I'm curious to know if does Kamlesh mean like to bring Jain teachings into these schools? I think it's a similar question to what you have, Sunny. I don't know if Kamlesh is still there, but does it mean to bring Jain teachings into, you know, primary school basically and teach non-Jains also about these principles, which is an important and good idea? Or do you mean, how do you reach that age group within the Jain community? That's kind of what I'm wondering. So I think there's initiatives to bring more diversity of teachings into schools in general, religious studies teachings. And it would be important to have the Jain voice there amplified, right? Because when kids learn about world religions, you'll often hear them, they learned about Buddhism, they learned about Hinduism, they learned about a lot of things. But when you say Jainism, it's always one of the ones that's more fringe, but it shouldn't be. It should be more central. So I think from like a non-Jain perspective, it should be more centralized. I don't have an answer to that question, but I think it's a really good one. So I'll just share that.
And I do want to give opportunity to Arpit as well, not to put you on the spot, but when we talk about like even these Jain programs at various universities, I think that's doing a great job in kind of making Jainism as a religion more aware. There's more awareness about Jainism as a religion through these programs as well. And I know, Arpit, you have like a lot more experience in all the Jain programs that are happening in various universities. If you want to maybe, share a little brief overview of what is going on currently in North America, and what happens in North America, I know will also impact other countries as well. So please feel free.
Absolutely, Sunny. And I think, my first, connection with the Jain Education Initiative was in 2010 when I moved to Miami, and they were starting a professorship of Bhagwan Mahavir under the name of Bhagwan Mahavir, and they were endowing some fund to kind of fund the education in Florida International University in Department of Religious Studies as a professor in Jainism. And I think this is a very, very crucial and important seed which we are planting eventually when it grows into a bigger tree. Because what I learned over these 10 years from that initiative was all non-Jains, all the people who are not even aware about Jainism, starting to realize that it's such a beautiful religion, it's such a beautiful concept, it's such a beautiful idea where everybody can come together and learn it. And it empowers the people who are studying in the university, whether they're Indians, Jains, or from a different religion, but coming from South Asian origin, is that there is something which is in parallel with Buddhism, or even it was way before Buddhism, which is there and still being practiced. And it's exemplifying. Then Shramnijis were coming and teaching there. They were exemplifying as the monks who represent how Jain way of life is. So it was so impactful. So the students which I meet from there, they are taking their own initiative. They are applying Jainism and veganism. They are going and doing spirituality, meditation, Preksha meditation classes and all. So there are a lot of other initiatives which now have been existing. I think there are more than 10 professorships which are already there, which are teaching those things. And I think that's where the impact is coming from. Those universities, people are aware who Jains are, and it gives a kid like who is just entering into the college. They don't even introduce themselves like, am I Jain? Like, they don't know who's Jain. What do you mean? And some people have a notion of Jainism about, oh, they're monks and they leave everything and go on salvation. That is Jainism. So this narrative is really, really helping. And I think as a community, we need to support more such initiatives, Arihanta Academy being one. and connect all of them together, kind of have conferences which are happening at a level in which we are bringing youth. Let's do a YJ, like a conference with YJ. If they're doing their retreats, why not send some professors up there and talk about it, like just to get the feel of it. So engagement needs to increase, and I think these university courses are doing an amazing job at it, but we need to still support more. We need to do more as a community towards the youth.
Thank you so much, Arpit. And I can't tell you how wonderful a feeling it was where someone asked me, they saw my last name, they asked me if I was Jain. And this was in College Station, Texas, random city. And that was incredible that people even there, had this awareness of Jainism. So really incredible stuff. I'll kind of continue on with the comments. We have Viletia had mentioned that once kids start working, they lose connection with Jain religion. This is a trend with kids ages 25 and higher. Would be good to do something to bring them back. Absolutely. I think we had mentioned that this is like a universal trend. Like you can actually, if we have big data, we could probably pinpoint that there's a certain age when Jains often do disconnect, often during college, and then when they have kids, they come back, right? And so I think that's a trend we see everywhere. And I think what Dr. Praveen said on how we reel them back or maybe insert Dharma into their life when they go off I think would be a great opportunity. Kushal mentioned, is there a local Jain network for youth in Toronto, Canada? There's a huge Jain presence in Toronto. I think Apurva was in the chat as well. We can share a few links, but the Jain Toronto scene is incredible. If you're not connected, I highly recommend that you kind of reach out to Apurva and learn how you can get involved there. Kind of looking forward. I think Vivek had mentioned that there's a few interesting modern issues that we can have interesting conversations within Jainism about. Let's see, food for thought. Our great friend Danish Kotari mentioned, what will be the role of derasar in our lives in the future, other than being a place of worship? That is a really good question. Does anyone want to share what your thought is of the role of derasar? This is kind of like a futuristic thought, not the present.
I think that's a great question. As a futuristic thought, the idea that Arpit had of, hey, let's provide some kind of community where we can benefit, help them in the finances or mental health, or, this is kind of being that center of support for the Jain community. And I feel like that is lacking right now. So for future thought, I would want to manifest that.
If I could add, I think the place of derasar will be there and should be there all the times, okay? Because that's an important center point where everybody comes together and do whatever they want to, whatever way they want to practice their rituals. But at the same time, as Varun mentioned, we have to go beyond derasar, okay? Derasar meaning has to go beyond not just worshipping, but other areas that the community needs to get involved with also. So I think that is where I see future derasars to be run by our youth. That is the direction that will go. There'll be worshipping part, plus there'll be sort of wider contextual parts as well.
Yeah. And wow, Vivek wrote an incredible comment. So in addition to these thoughts, right, perhaps a future derasar could be involved with mental health, with relationship coaching, with career coaching, with spirituality, with yoga, right? I mean, that would be pretty cool, right? Meditation, find different ways. And I think, and I was kind of going through the list, and I think we covered most of the topics here, and I know about 25 minutes over, I'm so sorry, y'all. I'll kind of just conclude with, one thought. And this is, I had spoke to someone that was, one of the founding members of Jaina, or maybe one of the early on management teams. And they said that when they formed Jaina, right, as an organization, their idea was they wanted to have an organization or maybe an opportunity to touch a Jain's person in every part of their life, right? And so we start off with, for example, YJA, right? We start off, maybe, age 1 through, 14 at local derasars, through parents and through local, organizations. And then once you reach age 14, you become a part of YJA, right? And so there's an organization that caters to your needs, that caters to things that matter to you, and really, I think really reels you into the foundation of being a part of the Jain community. Once you reach around age 24 and you are officially working now, there's an organization called Young Jain Professionals, YJP. And they do an incredible job of the mentorship, We talk about career advancement. We talk about networking. Whichever industry you're in, whichever city you're in, we have an organization for that. We have an organization known as Jain Connect, right? That helps with the matrimony side. Obviously, there's a lot of challenges being, especially for Jains in North America, meeting Jains in North America. And so I think Jain Connect is helping breaking those barriers as well. And then finally, we have Jaina as an overall umbrella organization, which kind of brings it all together. And in between these organizations, we have, the evolution of many new organizations. We have Arihanta Academy that's making Jain education accessible. We have, we have Jains for Justice, which is, discussing the idea of social justice issues and modern issues and how we apply Jainism to it. We have the Jain Vegan Initiative, which is, talking about a very, very difficult, it's probably the most difficult conversation in terms of how we incorporate dairy into our modern life as a Jain, right? We have, of course, the Global Jain Network, which is just really creating virtual spaces, connect Jains. And we have Jito as well, which is, like YJP is providing business and empowering Jain business leaders so that we have a presence in business spaces around the world. So I think I covered a huge portion. I know there's so many more, Jain groups that are, popping up. And I think that's just the logical evolution of the Jain community. So I think it's a good thing that we have this. So with that being said, I will keep you no longer waiting 30 minutes over the designated time. And I just want to thank you all again. And we're going to go ahead and conclude this session. Thank everyone again for being a part of this. And we do have a recording of this. So, please feel free to reach out to us for someone that has missed this event. And, I'm sure we would be able to provide some kind of accommodation. So with that, thank you.
And I want to, one thing, Sunny, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I wanted to actually thank you for hosting this. And Vivek just mentioned in the chat, a lot of initiatives you do. And, we have an excellent host and a panelist in you. I really want to thank you for all your effort and Arihanta Academy for doing all this. And a takeaway for everybody who's just listening right now, we can have these discussions, we can go forward and set up a lot of goals, but in your heads, like we need to ourselves kind of motivate to learn about this and kind of help a Jain kid, like go out and see what they're looking for, try to help them as much as you can. It just not be your kids. It could be kids who are coming into the derasar and they don't know anyone in the city. So like, let's, as the outcome of this session, let's decide one thing that, this month we're going to reach out to one Jain kid, tell them about YJP or Arihanta Academy as a goal for this month. And let's say we'll have more roundtables on this topic. We'll have some blogs posted as well, and we'll connect back with you guys. But thank you so much for attending.
And if anyone else has any closing thoughts, please feel free. I want to give you a chance to say any final thoughts, and we'll go ahead and close out. Thank you.